started here. All right. So we're looking at like three different terminal shells down there at the bottom right, right at the like kind of like bottom right side.
That's right.
So the reason for this is because we wanted one terminal shell for our front end, one terminal shell for our back end, and then one terminal shell to like write to issue commands, create files, directories, install packages, and all that. So in that top terminal there, let's go ahead and click on that top one just to make sure that we're looking at. Okay, looks like we're looking at that one. Cool. So that topmost one there, let's go ahead and type in here. Let's type in CD front end, CD space front end.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because CD in this case just means change directory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the second terminal shell down in that list of three on the right side, let's click on the second one.
That'd be CD backend.
Exactly, right? Because in order for us, like when we run the commands to fire up the development server, right on the front end, also the development server for our API backend, we need those to be running in terminal shells that are pointed to those project directories.
Okay.
So so we got backend here. The third one we can just kind of like leave it, right? Kind of open-ended. But let's go ahead here. I can start the screen control and let's get the browser on the right side and the code editor on the left side.
All right.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, and I do remember last time we were dealing with that kind of tricky import-export related error.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was, I mean, you know, for now, like we can kind of, I remember last time we were saying, hey, why don't we just, you know, we don't have to create a separate component file for that. Why don't we just go ahead and use it all in one file, right? And that helped us to get around it. But that was a little bit peculiar to me, seeing that error. And my thought process here is it might have something to do with the router that we have set up here, because we're basically saying like from lines 26 to 39, right? We're setting up all these sort of access points. We're saying, okay, when we're at the root path there, right, with just // we're going to be rendering the home component, right? That element we're going to be rendering. The second path / add book, we're going to be rendering that add book form. And the third one, excuse me, manage books, we're going to be going ahead and rendering book list. The only thing that I was concerned with there is what I was thinking is the reason why we might be seeing that import-export related errors, because we haven't indicated the element there in that final object from 35 to 38.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that's the issue. I'm gonna try maybe a few different things, but again, I don't want us to get too caught up on that here today, like we did last time.
Yeah.
So okay, so I should have control here. I'm only seeing the VS code here. I think if
I just I don't. What do I need to type down to get it to start to where I can bring up the?
Oh, the servers. Gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna click here in the first one, and if we go to that first terminal shell here, this is the point at which we type in npm start.
That's right. It just npm start. Okay. I'll type it down.
Oh, okay. I think we might have both. That's okay. You can type it down. I think it might be a little better just for you to get used to the commands there. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. It's starting to.
Yeah. So we got npm start, and there's our server running in there. It looks like it's still kind of booting up for us, right?
All right. Let me now do the screen share. Okay, we have both up.
All right, perfect. So let's go ahead now. I'm going to go to the second terminal shell here and click inside. So there we go. Okay, we got the browser on the side here. Let's go ahead and minimize this. Okay, so we're seeing that failed to fetch error there because again, our backend isn't running here. So I'm going to go
Mhm.
ahead and do Flask run.
That's right.
Yep, right inside of here. I'm going to go trying to click in the bottom left there. Okay, just seemed like there was a bit of a delay. So I'm going to type. Let's see if it registers my keystrokes here. There we go.
Yeah, it says Flask run.
Okay. Yeah, it looked like there was just a bit of a lag for that to show up on my end here.
Ah,
So let's get that going there, and let's hop over to here, and let's go ahead and pull just from our root location here again. So again, we can see all of our different components loading up here when we click on these different links here, right? Because again, we've got remember that we've got links that we imported from, in this case, React Router DOM that we're using in each one of those components. So if I go over here and take a look at, for example, just the home component, we can see that we've got all those links just kind of hard-coded in here for now, right?
okay.
So again, what these are going to do is they're going to enable us to navigate to different locations, right? Without triggering a page refresh, right? We're just re-rendering, selectively re-rendering what components we want to appear here. Now, let's take a look over here at library. And library, in this case, if I'm looking at the book list component and I click on it and it says manage books, there are all of our components coming through here now. And I believe the reason why we were able to fix this was because over here in book list, we removed that import export logic, right? And just directly drop this list item in here. So I'm going to keep that as is for now, just so that we don't get caught up with the same sort of error we were dealing with last time, but we can always come back to that component that I created. So we've got a bunch of different delete buttons here. And the thing is this, when this button is deleted, we want some sort of a change to take place higher up in our component hierarchy here. So what we can do is in app.js in our root component here, if I scroll up to the top, let's go to the very top here. And looking at this root component, just seems like it's a little, there we go. So again, we've got our book state set here, right, at this high level, because we want that book state to be available to all of our other components, right? We can pass that state down. Let's also go ahead here. These are all the sort of like configurations like state, use effect, what we've got up here from like just about line 16 to 39. So I'm going to create another section here, and I'm just going to call this one callback functions. Yeah, there's a pretty serious delay with my typing here. Okay, I'm just seeing callback coming through now and then functions. But interesting. Okay, I'll try to just work with that here. All right, so so this callback function is going to be responsible for basically saying when we click on that delete button, right? We want something to happen. We want ideally obviously we want our state to be updated, right? We want to remove that book from our state. And then we want to send that, right? We want to send that request that we're making to the backend to actually delete that book in the database. So I'll define a function here to say const handle delete. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it is lagging so much there, but let's see. Const handle delete. I'll go ahead here, and I'll drop in the rest of our function structure here. And so handle delete, when we go ahead and click on this individual element here, we're going to be able to get something from the event, right? From the click event that takes place. So let's go ahead here. Let's do E. And let's say in this case, okay, when we click on this, individual item, when we click on any one of these delete buttons for any one of these components here, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, from the target of the event, right, what is clicked on here, we want to say that I click on this button, the target of the event is this individual button here. But I should be able to get some sort of, other information here, right, from this component or from the event itself, actually. Let's take a look over at, again, book list to see how we're rendering these components.
All right.
So pulling book list up here, we have the ID, which we are passing as a key, right? In this case, as a key for each one of these list items that we're generating for each one of our books. So what I should be able to say here is, okay, the parent of the target of the event, right? The parent of the target of the event is going to be the list item here, right? This entire component.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I can do is I can also assign IDs here. Let's try something like ID. If I click up here, if I say ID is equal to book.id. So let's give that a second here. And we'll go ahead and put a curly brace here to close it off. And so now each one of these list items that we see here in the browser, if I inspect the element on this, let's click here. Okay. I'm going to try to switch over my connection here really quickly. There might be a little bit of a stall in the call here, but it shouldn't be more than a hiccup.
Okay.
Just going to go ahead and change. All right, can you hear me now? Hi, Matthew, can you hear me now? Hi, Matthew, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Okay, I can hear you. Just wanted to make sure. Hi, Matthew, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. All right, I can hear you. I think this is a little smoother now. So I'm going to go ahead and request a remote control. And okay, cool. That seems, yeah, much better now. I can see it loading up. So looking over here then at the console, let's take a look at the elements and let's take a look at each one of these list item elements. So each one of these list item elements inside of here has an ID, which is the same thing as the ID, right, of that individual book in the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to use this information to actually select which book we want to delete, right, on the back end. So let's try here for now, just a console log. And let's do e.target. And I'll just say, yeah, just e.target in this case. Now let's take this function. Let's pass it down to, in this case, okay, we have it as handle delete here, but I'm going to pass it down to book list. Let's save that out. So in this case, because I am defining it as a const, I've got to go ahead and actually set this up a little higher. So I'm going to do Control X here to copy it. And then we'll go ahead and maybe put it just below or just above our router here. So let's go ahead here and paste this in. And we save this one out. And handle delete here. Let's go ahead and move these back some spaces. Okay. So handle delete is being passed to book list. Let's go to book list now. Let's destructure that. And now I'm going to go ahead and say with this button, when we click this button, we want to fire off handle delete. So if I go over to the console here, let's refresh to clear that out. And if there's any errors here, I can take a look on click. All right. So now if I click on delete, right, we can see that the target of the event, right, of that click, which is what I'm console logging right here, is the individual button itself, right? But we can actually chain other things off of e.target. If I go to MDN here, and if I say, let's say e.target, and let's say parent container. So we can work with this individual property here. Let's take a look at all the instances of event. Okay, so they have event.target.style.visibility equals hidden. So basically what I could say with that line of code, right, is like change the style visibility here to hidden so that button disappears. But we want to go a little bit higher here, right? We want to say something like, let me see on my end, just because there's a little bit of lag here. Okay, so let's try here. Instead of e.target, or in addition to e.target, I'm going to go ahead and state parent node. Let's go back over here and let's refresh. Okay. And so there's different ways that I could pull this information, right? Like over here in book list, I've got the ID set for each one of these. But actually, the kind of cool thing here, I don't necessarily have to set this ID with a book ID. What I can do is I can actually just pass it directly in, right, with the function. So over here, let's go ahead and use this structure here. Let's say handle delete. We're still going to, we could pass the event itself, but actually in this case, what I'm seeing here is that all that we really need to pass is, in this case, the ID of the book in question, right? So we're going to say book.id. And now over here in app.js, if I say console log, and let's say here, book ID. Now let's go ahead here and log book ID. Mosquitoes are really bad here in Florida. I think one is eating me alive.
Mosquitoes?
Yeah, we got a lot of really bad mosquitoes in Florida, and they're very smart. They can tell when you're distracted, and they just go in. All right. So yeah. So let's go ahead and refresh here. Now let's click on delete. And if I click on delete here, then we can see the IDs, right, of each one of those books coming through. So what we want to do now is we want to send a fetch request with this ID to the backend. Let's say http://127.0.0.1, 5,000. And let's go ahead here and state, sorry, I'm kind of a little paranoid right now because this giant mosquito keeps biting me. So let's see here. Okay, so the individual route here, we can see delete book right on the back end. But what we've got to provide, we can see in that URL, is the ID of the book that we want to delete, right? So what we're going to say here is app.js. Let's go ahead and say here, delete book. But in this case, we want to go ahead and interpolate. I'm going to use backticks here because we're going to interpolate a value into this fetch request. So the value we're going to interpolate into there is going to be book ID. Right? Because when we send this request to the backend, again, the way that we set up our logic is such that when a delete request is sent to this individual location here, we want to take that book ID, we want to pass it in here, we want to find the book, delete the book, and then commit the changes to the database. So here on the front end, we're supplying that ID, right? It's being passed up from this component here of book list. We're taking the book ID. When we click on the button, it's sent back up here. This function here fires off. And so let's take the response here. Let's do response.json. Again, to parse out the JSON response from the backend into JavaScript. And then we're going to have the ultimate data here. And let's do a console.log of data. So again, now not only are we going to take that book ID, right, and log it to the console just to confirm, now we're going to take it, we've interpolated it. And when we send off this request here, again, we should see a console log of something coming from the backend for us here. I'd also like to view our terminal so that we can see anything that might happen on the backend when we go ahead and send that request. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on delete for the first one. We can see in this case that if I see right here, right, we've sent a get to 101. And in this case, we've taken that value and we've gone ahead and removed it from the database. This is our JSON response. It's basically our like remaining collection here of books, right, inside of our collection here. So let's go ahead, let's click again on, or actually, I'm going to go ahead and just refresh this page because there's something important, right? We see this one that I just deleted is still here. But let's go ahead and refresh, and it's gone, right? Now, if I go ahead here and if I click on delete, once again, we can see that we get a smaller collection now, right, of 11 coming through. I refresh, and that one is also gone now, right, from the collection. So these are succeeding on the back end. We've just got to provide a confirmation, right, on the front end of what it is that we want to appear here. So what we can do, that response that's coming back to us, right, that array of remaining items, we can actually use that to update our state to the latest, right, collection of information that we have here. So let's say in this case, we've got data, and I'm going to go ahead and state here that we want to use that data in order to set our state. So let's go ahead and say here, let's pass this setter function, or actually we have it right here, book setter. Let's set the book setter, let's use the setter function here to set that state upon a successful response, to set that state equal to the newest collection of data here. So if I go ahead and refresh here, let's go ahead and click one more time here. We see it disappears, right? But if I refresh, it's still gone. All right, so I click again, it's removed from our list here, and it's truly gone on the back end. And I can continue doing that, right, for all of our different books here until maybe there's just one left. All right, just this one book here. So if I refresh, this is our only remaining book. Right, so we wanted to incorporate, does that make sense there? Like how we wanted to incorporate the setter function here to update things.
Yeah, the logic, it makes sense.
All right, now I could even like make it a little clearer here. I could say something like, you know, we could say remaining books, right? Because really what we're getting back as a response there is our remaining books from the backend. And we just go ahead here and update our state with remaining books after we've gone ahead and you know, gotten a successful response here. Parsed out that response from JSON to JavaScript, which yields us this array of JavaScript objects, which we can use to set our state here.
And the delete book, you get that from the top part, right?
Yeah, we get that from routes.
That's right.
Yep. So from routes over here, this is just how we defined it, right? If I said something like delete book with 3 O's, then I would need to make sure on the front end to make sure that it's 3 O's. Right. So we're kind of just following these sort of rules that we've set on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
Excuse me.
That's
I
okay.
think it's the springtime in Korea. Ton of pollen.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was like there was a big problem with hay pollen or something, hay fever. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people had. Yeah, like out in Japan, that was pretty common.
So it's about to be cherry blossom season, which is beautiful, but
Oh, nice.
man, it is hell on the throat.
Yeah, yeah. I remember a lot of I've never had like really, really bad allergies, but a lot of my students did over there, and they always had the masks on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want to go back to add book because the tricky thing with this form here, obviously we shouldn't have the user entering in the ID. That's really kind of awkward, right, of us to do here.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do here is think about how that ID is going to be set up for us, because it really should be auto generated for us. Let's go over to routes.py and let's look for, in this case, again, add_book. So in this case, in request.method, we're getting the ID I can see here from the request itself, right, which is a post request.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this case, we're packaging up, I can see here, a book object, right, that we're creating a new instance of the book class before going ahead and adding it here. So again, ID generation is not something we should be getting from the form. But if we did get it from the form, I mean, let's check out our models here as well, just to see. Okay, I can see this db.column. And then we have set ID for the user. And I see that ID is not even really included in these parameters here. So I'd like for us to set up the same sort of flow here with our init method here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this entirely from, like, basically here it's expecting us whenever we create a new instance of a book, we have to pass in that ID. But I want to set the ID in this case in the similar fashion as what we're doing for users. Here, we're going ahead and just generating like this random string, right, of numbers and letters here, which may be a better way of us going about this. I can see, again, users, we have our ID set over here in this fashion. Let's go ahead and take this same sort of flow and let's drop it into here. Oops. Let's drop that in here now. Sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
We got that there. All right. So we're going to set the ID here. And again, when we initialize here, instead of it just being ID that's being passed in, we want it in this case to be self.set_ID. So, and again, in this case, okay, we have integer set as ID. We also have integer set as our primary value here, as our primary key for our users. So shouldn't be too hard for us to go ahead and implement the same sort of logic to set like a random value to the ID for our books here. So let's go ahead here and let's create a new book. I'm going to go back over to add book form. Let's remove the ID here because we no longer want the user to input that. So again, ID in this case disappears. We also want, let's go down here and see, again, type of submit. We've already got on submit firing off here to go ahead and add that book. So over here in app.js, let's take a look. Okay, we've got a router provider handle delete, add book form we have in this case. But again, book list, let me see this function here that we're using. Or excuse me, add book form. Let's go ahead and see this. Again, we're sending to this location here. And it should also update our state, which we'll see once we go ahead and navigate back to home. So ID is taken out over here. Let's go over to routes.py. Let's get rid of ID here, because again, this is not going to be something that we're going to be setting ourselves. Let's get rid of ID here. And let's go ahead and do a test here. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hardcover, submit. Okay. So again, even if this is giving us an error, I can take a look at it here on inside of the terminal, inside our code editor. But I can confirm over here whether or not that appeared for us. I'm going to just do a refresh. Okay, so that didn't persist to the backend then for us. Let's go over to terminal. And let's take a look here and see. Okay, so I can see the ID was generated properly here. It's this kind of random string of numbers and letters. Let's see here. Let's go back up a little bit. And I'm just going to go down a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Invalid input syntax for type integer. Okay. So, right. So again, in this case, right, we're trying to set, in this case, a string for a value that it's expecting on the back end to be an integer. So let me see if I can find, just a moment here, a function that we could utilize to create a random ID here and keep it as a number, right?
All right.
So let's see here. We want it to be set as a random. Okay, so let's try this. What I was thinking here is, let's just try math.random to test this out real quick. Okay, so in this case, that will just give us a random number here. But let's see. Okay, so we could set a range as well. Okay, so let's try this a few more times. Again, math.random is always going to yield for us a number between 0 and 1. So in this case, again, we want the IDs, though, to be consecutive. So if the IDs are consecutive or unique identifiers, let's see over here again, inside of our models. Again, here we're saying set ID to go ahead and do this. But there are different ways that I could do it. I could take all of the books that we have and maybe get a list of all of the books that we currently have, a length, and then draw from that length, right, the ID that we want to set. Keeping it in here as set ID, that would be random numbers. But again, if we want them to be consecutive, let's try this. I'm going to go ahead and bring ID back in here. And if we supply an ID, I'm going to go over to routes.py again over here. Let's update our request to take in that ID. And from the front end, when we do add book form, right now we're not passing any individual items over here. But if I go to app.js, let's take that state of books. Let's pass it down to add book form. And every single time we go ahead and package up a new book that we send off, we're going to want the ID. Let's go ahead and remove the ID from state. Let's see here again, add book form. I could go ahead, let's do books here. Because this is no longer inside of the form, I'm going to get rid of this state here. I'm also going to get, or in this case, we still want to go ahead and do parse into ID. That's going to be undefined for us. Let's go ahead and remove ID setter here. We're still going to have that one error of ID over here. But again, the ID here is just going to be if we're passing in books, then we should be able to say something like books.length +1. Right, so if we have, in this case, right, we currently have one book inside of here. If I go over to add book, and let's go over here now and do another test one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hardcover. Let's click submit. There we go, right? ID of 2. So if I go over to library now, we can see that. Let's refresh here. Okay, so we need to do a refresh here in order for that to load up, and we can change that, right? So that we get like the latest list here coming up for us.
All right.
But again here, if I do add book, then we should be able to see here, you know, I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I click on hardcover here and I click on submit. Now we have an ID of 3, right? Because we have 3 books. Or excuse me, we had 2 books inside of our state. And now we have 3 books, right, inside of our state. So again, over here, new book, we're now taking the total number of books length and adding 1 here. What I also want to do is I want to update state here. Once we successfully go ahead and complete this request down here, see how we have like a console log of data? And this is basically just like a confirmation, right? A confirmation that the request was successful. What I'm going to do now is let's take the state setter function. Let's also pass that down to add book form. So let's state here, in this case, this would be set. Let's see our setter function here. Book setter. So this will be book setter. Let's pass that down. Let's go over to add book form, our component here. Let's destructure from our props up here. Let's say this would be, this would actually be books setter. And again, down here, only once we get a successful response do I want to go ahead and say, all right, let's update our state. Let's say books setter. Let's set it equal to whatever the book state is, right? We're going to expand there, use the spread operator to make a shallow copy of all of our books, and then adding in that new book as well. Right, so what's happening here is once we get a successful response from the backend, we update the book's state to reflect this newest book. So that when I go ahead over here, let's refresh, we can see like the latest list here of all books coming through. If I go over to add book now, and then let's do here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I click here, select hardcover. Let's go ahead and submit. Now, if I go to library, we should see a little bit further down, there's our newest book. I'm not quite sure how it's ordering them right now. But we can see that newest book there because again, I updated the state right down here. Right, so notice how before when we added that book and then went back over here, we didn't see that book. And that was because we hadn't updated our state after going ahead and successfully adding that new book, right? Remember, this is all of the behaviors that take place when we submit that form to add a new book. So this way also, if I go to add book and let's do test, 1, 2, 3. Let's do submit. 1, 2, 3. Let's do submit here. Now, again, if I do, you know, let's say instead of ISBN 1, 2, 3, let's say 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. If I wasn't updating the state as I'm doing right here, because we're using state to set the ID, it would have gotten a little bit confused here. Right. Okay. So basically, it would have tried to generate an item with the same ID as the previous one I tried to create there because state hadn't been updated, right? We hadn't gone ahead and updated the book state with the newest book that we created here.
All right.
So now, right. So now what we're saying is after we submit that, we can submit that form as many times as we want. And whenever we go over to the library, we'll always see the newest items included here.
Awesome.
So these are all going to appear here for us. I am able to go ahead and delete these as well. I think if I take a look over at models, I don't think we have any. Okay, so we have ID, ISBN, author, title, length, hardcover. We could have something like date created in order to order them by like, most recent to oldest. We could also order them any number of ways, right? Like right now with book list, I'm taking books that are passed down here, this book state, and I'm just mapping through them all, right? But I could apply some sort of like sorting logic, right, to this state that's passed down in order for us to see like maybe the most updated list here, or just in order for us to go ahead and see, let's do something like this, const new book list. And let's say over here, okay, so new book list again, in this case, we're taking all of these books that are passed in here, and ID, I'm going to go ahead and keep out. But I could say here, instead of new book list, I could say sorted book list. And then I could say something like books dot. And let me see how I can sort this in JavaScript. Because we could sort based on an individual attribute by one of those values here. Okay, let's see here. We could also, on the back end, I believe we could do it through this sort of structure that we have. Like before we even send back that information, we could filter it. Because right over here, for example, with like manage books, notice how we just go ahead and JSONify. The response here for manage books is just books dictionary, where we go ahead and convert all of those books to dictionaries and then return an array and then JSONify that array. But we're stating here book.query.order by book.title. Okay, so this is how we're ordering all of our queries over here. So let me actually go ahead here to book list. Let's remove some of this logic because we can actually apply the sorting on the back end before we even return them. So it looks like they're being sorted by title here, right? Which is why we're seeing this sort of flow. Let's go to routes.py. And instead of it being ordered by book.title, let's go ahead and order it maybe by book.id. So that when I refresh over here, now they're ordered by ID. We can see ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's a lot cleaner for us here. So good that we can just do this right on the back end, right? Just like a little syntax change. And that ultimately determines what is returned here, right? In the JSON response. So we don't have to do any formatting on the front end. We do all of that here.
All right.
Cool. So now they're ordered by IDs over here. We've also got the delete functionality here. So I should just be able to go ahead and delete, and we see them gradually being removed from the list here. Now, if I go over to add book, let's just test this one more time. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's go over to library. And there's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we should also be able to, on add book form, when we go ahead and click on that submit button, we should also not only be able to update state over here, but we should be able to redirect the user to a different location. So I should be able to just go ahead here and redirect the user again to manage books. But let me see in this case how we can set that in React. Again, our redirect. Okay, so that'll be a specific hook that we can utilize here. That will actually be the use navigate hook. So I can state up here, use state and use navigate. And so right over here, we've got all of our different states set up. Let's go ahead and also create our navigate object, which is going to be equal to an invocation of use navigate. So we're going to invoke that. Invoke that hook to create our navigate object. And let's go ahead and set this to a const. And instead of saying here, redirect, let's state here. I'll put here 3 dots before navigating the user back to manage books. And personally, I mean, I would like to call this maybe something more like library, but let's say navigate / manage books. All right, so again, if I go to add book, then we say, oops, let's refresh here. Okay, and let's just double check here. My syntax. Use navigate, we have imported over here. Navigate, we have set equal to, yep, an invocation of use navigate. And then down here in our code, this is within our on submit callback function here. So let's see, we are within our component definition here as well, so that should be fine. And let's just double check here as well. So we are using v6 of React Router DOM. Oh, excuse me. This is actually an import from React Router DOM, not from our main React library. So let's go back over here. Let's go back up to the top here. And instead of use navigate from React, I'm going to go ahead and import that from React Router DOM. Let's exit out of this. Let's go ahead and refresh. All right, so let's see our library. There's our library of all of these different pieces here. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to copy this, paste it, paste it, paste it. Let's go ahead and submit. And again, we just automatically redirect, right, the user back to this location now. And we use this hook here of use navigate because that's going to allow us to go ahead and redirect without triggering a page refresh, right? So it's going to now allow us to go ahead and redirect in this sort of client-side fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So we've confirmed here when I go ahead and enter this in that we're going to go ahead and just be redirected back to our library here. We've got all of our information showing over here. We could also go ahead and incorporate an edit button here because I know we had that on our back end as well. So let's go to book list and let's add one more button here. And I'm going to call this button pretty much the same thing as what we had before. It's going to be a very similar structure, but in this case, it's going to be handle edit. Or in this case with edit, what I'm actually liking more is when we click on this, we navigate to a different location here. So really what this should do when we click on edit, it should take us to a form, right, to update this, right, this individual item here. So let's do BR. And just to separate them for now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when we click on this one here, let's say something like, I can go ahead here and import use navigate as well. I can go over here and I can state navigate is equal to use navigate. I can create that object. And again, when we click on this one, I guess there's a few different ways that I could do it. I could use like a regular link here. And when I click on this link, I want it to take us to, in this case, let's see on the back end. Edit book, I can see over here. So it should take us to edit book along with that ID, right, of that book. So again, back here in book list, where we've got all of our buttons, we want to take the user to, in this case, edit book, but we're going to interpolate a value into this one as well. And we're going to state here that we want the user to be taken to. Sure, those are backticks there. We want to take the user to. Not sure why it's. Let's see. So I should be able to actually go ahead here and do curly braces because we're going to execute a little bit of code in here. So there we go. And then we'll say edit book, and we'll state here that we want to interpolate book.id. So we want to just take them to that location. Let's go ahead here and remove this as well. I'm not going to use navigate here. All right. So let's refresh and take a look. Again, this is an edit, or excuse me, this is just like an anchor element link, right? That's appearing here for us. But I could still make it. I could still make it a button, right? I could go ahead and just wrap this whole link here inside of a button, so that it appears a little bit more, and then we could do, any sort of styling and so on later. Okay, so when we click on this edit link here, again, if we look at the bottom left, right, it's going to take us to edit book and then whatever the ID is of that book. But what we don't have set back here in app.js, not quite yet, with all of our routes, is a route to accommodate this, right? So let's go ahead and let's create another object here to reflect another path that we want. Let's go ahead here and state, I could say edit book. And then in this case, it's actually going to be the ID, right, of the book that we include inside of here. So let me just double check here, like router DOM with params, how we go ahead and set those. Could use params in this case. Okay, that should be fine for us. So let's go ahead here and let's state book ID. Then let's go ahead here and state elements. The element we want to render, we're going to create a new element here for ourselves. So for components, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one here, and it's going to be edit book form.js. There's going to be a lot of similarities with add book form, so I'm going to Control A here, and I'm going to move this over to edit book form. Let's go ahead and change this to reflect what we want here. State edit book form. And let's go down here. And let's change this to edit book form. And now down here, when we export it, let's export it as edit book form. And then over here in app.js, let's go ahead and import this component. State here, put it right next to the other one we have. Let's say import edit book form from /components edit book form. And we want to state down here that the element we want to appear is our edit book form component. All right. So again, when we click on this edit button here, we should be taken to this location of edit book along with book ID included here. And let's go ahead and click on edit and see what happens here for us. So we can see that we're taken to this location of /edit book /1. Let's go ahead and click on edit here again as well. There's our edit book form. And what we want edit book form to do here is we still want a use effect with edit book form. Actually, there's no use effect being used here, so I'm going to show you why. Well, actually, in this case, okay. So edit, in this case, if I went ahead and brought back in that state there, I could do it that way, but what I'm also thinking is, again, we click on edit, we're taken over to this location here, to this form. Edit book form, we could pass down the individual book in question. Let's see. So edit book form, I can see that we've got books and book setter included over here. Now we want the individual book to be passed down here, not all of our different books here, although I could use that as well. Let me just think for a moment here. When we submit this form here, this is really going to be updated, right? Updated book. And in this case, if I go back into here, all these state values, they're initially empty strings like we had for add book form, but the initial values should really just be the individual book, right, in question. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to utilize another hook, which is going to be use params for us. And use params, I should be able to go ahead here and pull that value, right, directly from the URL once we navigate to this location. So let's state here, use params. Let's go ahead over to, I'm going to change this back to new book just to get the errors out of the way. And kind of in the same way as navigate over here, let's say const params is equal to use params. And let's do a console log of params so we can see that coming in whenever we go to edit book form. So if I go to more tools here, let's go over to developer tools. Let's get our console open here. And let's click on edit. And let's see, in this case, use params. Maybe, okay, so use params may be another import from React Router DOM. So I'm going to go ahead and move that. There we go. All right, so we can see this object coming through here when I go ahead and click on that link. Let's go back to library and see it again. So let's refresh here. I click on edit, and we can see that we get this object. It's re-rendering. We're seeing it 2 times here because the component is rendering 2 times. But from this object, I can actually go ahead and I can pull that ID of the book, right, in question here for whatever it is that we're updating here. Use params, so I can get this value from the URL and I can use that to state which book it is that we're going to be updating here. But I also want to load up this bit of information here. So let's see. Edit book form could be a child. I could set it up as a child of book list in order to get all that information in there. But really, this information should be set for us. So let's see this again, edit book form. I have it back here in app.js set to this current route here. I don't have any props passed to it. But let's try something like this. Let's try const handle edit. And let's go ahead and define this function here such that we can pass in that book ID. So handle edit is actually going to be here in book list. So I'm going to say handle edit, set that equal to handle edit. And now handle edit over here, let me just check my syntax. Need a curly brace here. Handle edit, what it really should do is it should just go ahead and take that book ID. And we can do things this way as well. I have a link currently set inside of that, inside of the book list to like redirect us, right? When I click on, let's say this edit button here, right? It redirects us. But there's a few different things I can do. Let's do navigate. And let's bring back in again, use navigate. So I could probably bring that over here. Let's to use navigate. So we're going to want to, again, redirect the user. So let's say something like const. Let's first of all set up here. I'll do this right under state. Let's say const navigate is equal to use navigate. So now I can go ahead and I can say, all right, when we go ahead and click on that edit button for any one of these books, we want to first of all navigate the user to / in this case, book. Let's say edit book. And then let's state that we want to take them to edit book with book ID, right? Included over here. So that when we navigate them now, if I go back over to books list over here or book list, now I can actually set this as a button and I can say, all right, button on click. We want to go ahead and fire off, in this case, handle edit, and we're going to say book.id. Let's get rid of this closing link here. Let's go ahead and pass down handle edit. Or let's bring it out from the props object. And let's go back over to here now. So use navigate. The problem is that I'm using it outside of our router container over here. I can see, right? This is our router provider. So I would have to use navigate inside of one of these components that's included here. Again, handle edit. This complicates my approach to using navigate in this case. So since we're working outside of our router logic here, there's a few ways I could change this. I could go ahead and set up this sort of structure at the level of index.js in order to make that accessible to us. But let's take the previous approach that I had in mind here. So let's get out handle edit. I'm going to get rid of handle edit here. We still want to go ahead and navigate the user using link over here inside of book list. So I'll go ahead here and do Control Z, get rid of handle edit. Let's go ahead here and navigate the user using link to, in this case, to a particular location. Let's refresh. Use navigate is still presenting issues over here in app.js. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that now, because what's triggering the error is right up here, this individual line of code. I cannot go ahead and invoke use navigate outside of the context of a router provider. So if that is the case, that's okay. I can go ahead. We're actually not using link here, so I can take it out. We can still go ahead over here to book list. We can still go ahead and say, I'm going to just keep this as a link, although giving it a button container will help it to look a little more sound here. So again, we're going to go ahead and redirect the user. We click on edit. We're taken over to this location here to load up all this information. Now, what I'm thinking is with edit book form, I should be able to from all of the books here, if I'm passing in books, I should be able to, again, we've got like the using params, I'm able to get that ID right from this URL here. So let's say something like this. Let's get that individual value from params. I've already got it over here. Let's load up here. Again, in this case, I'm going to state something like, let's say const, and let's say book is equal to, and we're going to say books.filter. And we want to filter it out to where a book ID is equal to, in this case, params, since it's an object, I can say params dot book ID. So let's do a console.log of book to see if we get anything coming out of there. Now, in this case, again, books is being passed here. I'm accessing it in edit book form, but let's go over to app.js. And let's state over here in edit book form that we want to pass books here as well. We could pass the book setter as well. I'm going to keep that in here. Okay. Okay. So in this case, cannot access book before initialization. Let's go over to edit book form. And this is the const of book that I'm trying to go ahead and create out here. So let's see, again, I'm going ahead and trying to access it here, which is the problem here. Let's go ahead and refresh. Okay, so in this case, const of book cannot access before initialization. Let's say book to be updated, something just very, very specific here. Let's go to edit book form and let's take a look at line 14. I can see book is equal to, okay, so let's say something like this. Sorry, excuse me. For each one of these books here, we're going to go ahead and filter over them. And the condition we're going to apply here is going to be where the book.id is equal to the params.book underscore ID. So let's see here, we've got filter of book. Go ahead and remove these curly braces here. Okay. Let's go ahead and refresh here. There we go. All right, so that was not our problem here. I'm going to go ahead and state book. Now let's do a console.log of book to see that we found that individual book in question. All right, so in this case, let's say, let's do a few more console logs here. Let's say params. Let's see that params object one more time. Again, this is a params object here, book underscore ID. So params dot book underscore ID. There we go. We got the corresponding value here. And what we're trying to say is we're trying to filter out the one book whose ID is equal to the params of book ID. So let's do here console.log book.id so I can see those kind of side by side here. Okay. So again, book.id is only going to be within the confines of this individual filter over here. But let's go ahead here and state, let's see if I can actually see all of those books coming through here. Okay, there's our array of 4 books coming through over here. Now, let's drop all of this logic in here. Inside of here. Get rid of that curly brace. Okay, so let's refresh over here, and I'm going to comment this one out as well. Okay, so still not getting anything back. in this case. But let's see here again. So params, we're going ahead and accessing that value, which should be giving us this individual. Let's see, we're filtering through all those books. We're saying where book ID is equal to params.book_ID, which I verified over here is always going to be 1 or whatever it might be. Let's get rid of this one here. Let's go over to library here. Let's click on edit again. And let's go ahead and clear this one out. So we'll go back to library. Now let's go to edit. Okay, so again, params.bookID, I can see I'm getting that value coming through. We're trying to filter out here where book.id is equal to params.book_ID. Now this might be the problem of a string comparison here. Let me go ahead and try this. There we go. Okay, so it was just a problem of comparisons of different data types. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep that as 2 equals here. So we do end up with a book, right? So let's go ahead here and again, change this to book._ID. Let's go ahead and change that back to 2 equals. Let's do a console log of book. And so if I refresh here now, the console log of book, right, what comes back to us is the book in question here. So let's try something like book 0, really, because there's only going to be really 1, right, book in this collection ever. And so let's see if I can go ahead here, and book.filter is going to return the array, so I can't actually go ahead and apply that just yet. Let's say something like, again, book, in this case, is going to be the individual book that we want. We want to load these up as our values for our state. So let's say something like, book.ISBN. Let's go ahead and refresh here. Right, so the problem is here that I'm trying to go ahead and access that book, that const of book, but above those lines there. So let's see if I use let, it should allow me to go ahead and do something called hoisting. So I should be able to access it. Whoops. Oh, not sure how we got over here. Let me see. Edit book form. Let's refresh. Okay. So again, the problem here is that once again, I'm trying to access it before I go ahead here and do that. So let's state something like, we do need the const of params to be up there as well. So let's try to do these before these state setters. Let's try to go ahead here and just move the params up here. And then let's go ahead here and define book before we go ahead and even set up any of those state setters. So now in this case, I should be able to go ahead. Let's do refresh here and see to load up this information. If it's not loading up here in the forms to begin with, then that means that we're just not ending up with a book at that point. Let's do console.log of book.isbn. Right, so at this point inside of our code, we still have undefined here. But the state is being passed down here. We're also saying params.bookID. We're filtering through our state in order to go ahead and find this individual book in question. So let's try here again, console log of book. Okay, so there's our book coming through here. Now let's go ahead and say book 0. And there's our object. So let's say book 0 here .isbn, and there's our ISBN loading up. And now we want something like book 0.title. And I should also be able to say as well, book 0.author, book 0.length, and then also book 0. let's remove this here. And the initial value here we're saying is false, but I'll actually say here book 0 dot hard cover. So there we go. We can see that lighting up now, right? So again, the idea here, right, is when we go over to the library, we're able to see all of our books here. Now, when I click on edit for one of these, the forms are already loaded up, right, with the information. For any one of these that I click on, it's always going to dynamically pull in that info there.
All right.
So now we've got all this information here. We've still got to capture the values from the forms. And we still want to go ahead and update, right, the inputs to be just totally empty once we go ahead and submit this. Now, I'm going to change this one to be updated book. And I'm going to remove the ID here because there's going to be no ID that's actually, well, we still do need to pass an ID. But let's see here. Let's target the appropriate endpoint here. I believe it is edit book. And then the individual ID in this case is going to be, let's say, book 0.id. So let's see a few different things here. I wonder if I could actually go ahead. There's one approach I want to take here actually, which is, let's click X here. Let's try const. And I'm going to try to unpackage these values. Let's try something like ID. Let's say title. Let's say author. Let's say length. And let's say is hard cover. Or I could just state here hardcover. So this is going to create some conflicts in terms of naming here. So I'm actually going to just go ahead and remove this. Just wanted to see how I could simplify our code a little bit here. So let's save this out then. And again, in this case, new book is undefined. I'm going to go ahead down here and use backticks to interpolate this in here. This is not going to be a post. This is actually going to be a patch because we're updating one record in our database here. In the body of our request over here, we're going to be passing in updated book. And we're also going to go ahead here. I'm going to remove the ID because this is a patch request, right? We're not creating a new item here. We're just updating an existing item. So the response here should really just be, let's do a console.log of data. So let's refresh over here. Cannot read properties of ISBN. So in this case, because I'm refreshing the page, we're getting information that we need. Let's give it a shot right here. Hold on. ISBN, parse integer, ISBN. Let's see here. Whoops. So, okay, we have all these states set here. ISBN book 0.ISBN. Let's go ahead here and change our syntax. Let's go back over to manage books. Let's see if navigating back into here from there will change the outcome for us. Go ahead and click edit. Okay, so that does help us. If I do a refresh, that is a problem, so I'll have to address that because it's dependent upon us getting this value from params. When I go ahead and click on edit, we're getting this individual value from params. the book itself. We're finding the individual book. This actually yields us an array, so I'm accessing it via the only index number that we have actually available to us. So again, in this case, we have to, for now, we have to navigate to this form from Manage Books. We have to navigate to this from the list of all the books that we have. When we go ahead and update the book here, again, all the values that we're going to take are going to be ISBN, title, author, length, and hardcover. We're going to take that updated book, we're going to pass it in our patch request to the appropriate endpoint here, edit book, which is what we set over here in routes.py. We've got edit book and then book ID. If the request method is post, which is what we still need to handle here, right? When we go ahead and submit this, it is going to be a post request. I can actually see in this case that we have in routes, we have indicated here only post. So really it should be a patch request, but I'm going to go ahead and set it as a post because this individual endpoint here is expecting us to provide a post. So I'm going to go back over to here, edit book form, change this to post, and let's refresh. Again, here, the problem is navigating to this location from the correct location first. So I've got to go here first and go to edit. If I try to refresh that page, it's going to error out for us at the moment. Let's go ahead and change the ISBN to all twos. Let's go ahead and submit. And let's go ahead and check inside a terminal to see what the backend may have told us here. Request.form ISBN in this case. Okay, so ISBN is what I went ahead and actually changed in this case to a new value. And these are our initial values here from our object that we get filtered out. We're going ahead here and we're saying edit book. We're sending this request to the correct location along with the ID of the book in question. We're sending up this information here. Let's see if I can verify anything else here. We've got post edit book 1. We're sending it to the correct location here. So let's go a little bit further down and see. It's stating that we have a problem with routes.py with request.form ISBN. So if I go over here and take a look, we've got book.isbn is equal to request.form ISBN. Now in edit book form, we should have that individual input as ISBN. That is our value of ISBN. Let's see if we're going ahead and packaging up these values properly here. But if I say request.form ISBN, that's the same thing that we're doing over here in add book. So let me find add book. We are doing request. Okay, so in this case, they're doing request.json.get ISBN. So I'm going to update all of our logic over here to be request.json.get. Because when we send up this information from the front end to the back end, it's actually going to be, I've got to go up a little bit further here. It's going to be packaged as JSON right here with json.stringify. So what I've got to do on the back end is I've got to parse that JSON out as we're doing here. So I'm going to have to go over to, let's say, edit book. Scroll a little bit further down here. And let's say request dot, I'm actually going to replace all of these with, okay, so in this case, I just want to verify here as well. Book.isbn, we're going to go ahead and say, okay, request.json.get. And we're going to go ahead here and change this to be ISBN. And it's going to be the same thing for all of these other ones over here. I'm going to say request dot. Let's get rid of that closing parentheses, closing square bracket there. Request.json dot get. Again, I want to just verify JSON. Let's see if I can find any other instances. Okay, so I believe this was actually up in add book. So let me go ahead back to add book. Request.json dot get. So in this case, I'm going to go back to edit book. And we're going to say request dot JSON dot get, followed by all these different values. Let's do response dot JSON dot get. Change these to parentheses. Let's change this to again, request dot JSON dot get. Go ahead and change this one to length. And let's say request dot JSON dot get hardcover. Okay. So again, let's go back over to here. Let's go to our library. Let's click on the first one here. Let's change the ISBN to a bunch of 2s here. Let's go ahead and submit. Let's check what's going on the back end here. So parameters in this case, you can see ISBN and books_ID. Update book set ISBN where books ID is equal to books ID. Integer out of range in this case. So let's see. We update all of these different books here before going ahead and taking that book ID, finding that individual book. Now let's go a little bit further here just to trace this error a bit more. Let's try a little bit more. Let's see, edit book, db.session.commit. So the issue then is here with db.session.commit. Let's see. A little bit higher up here. Okay, so again, integer out of range, I'm seeing once again over here. Okay, so we're trying to, in this case, just update that one property here of ISBN where the book .id is equal to books_ID in this case. So let's see here. If I render the template, we've already got that template being rendered over here. Let's first of all just verify whether or not this book was updated. Okay, I can see the ISBN is the same here for us. Let's go back over to edit here. I want to just retrace that error. Let's click on submit. Okay, so again here stating integer out of range if we're sending this information. So again, let's check on the front end, edit book form. What we're sending over here with edit book form is this entire object along with the body of the updated book. But we're trying to find it by the ID, which is being passed in here as a param inside of the URL itself, just a little bit higher right up here. We're sending in the body of our request the updated book with all of these different values reflected inside. We've also got, when we send this updated book, we're taking all the values of the state at that moment before we go ahead and send up this information to the backend. Before we go ahead and again, navigate the user to manage books. But again, we're not seeing that navigate because there is an issue here with the way that we're going ahead and editing this book here. So in this case, if it's stating integer out of range, again, _ID, we're passing books_ID inside of here, inside of our request. updated book is included over here. But we're going ahead and we're updating all of the states here and going ahead and clearing out those inputs a little bit preemptively here. So let's go ahead and move the actual clearing out of the inputs to inside of here, because this is really something that we only want to take place only after we've got a successful confirmation from the backend that it has been updated. But we don't actually really need these to be cleared out, because what we're going to be doing is still just redirecting the user back to manage books. So this is going to error out for us if I refresh, but let's go back to manage books. Yep. Okay. So it looks like it defaulted here. Let's go ahead and click on edit. Here's this information. Let's go ahead and do here 222222. Let's click on submit. And okay, there we go. So it's not showing up here again, because the state itself hasn't been refreshed. But let's go ahead over here. Let's refresh and we'll see that number now reflected. So So not only do we want to go ahead and redirect them to manage books, but what we also want to do is, based on that console log of data, let's try it again one more time here. Edit. Let's do 333 for all these. If I click on submit, let's go ahead here and see. Just a moment here. Go back over to library. Let's click on edit here. Let's change this to all threes. Let's go ahead and submit. Okay, so again, in this case, I'm not updating the state values to be nothing anymore. So we should be able to go ahead and actually see this value come back to us. Let me try server refresh here. I'm going to go ahead and fire up the backend server once more here. I'm going to go back over to library. I'm going to click on edit here, and I'm going to also enter in once more over here all these different threes. Okay, there's our information. Loading up here. But again, what I've got to do is I've got to go ahead, right, and see this information loading up for us. So if we go ahead and navigate them back to manage books, let's try another book here really quickly. Let's try updating another value here. Let's say something like new title. Let's go ahead and submit. And again, if I refresh, now we'll see that new title coming through. So the problem here, I mean, we're updating everything on the back end. That's working for us without any issues. The problem is displaying this information in such a way that the most recent change is reflected in the state. So if I go ahead and if I say something like, okay, well, we'll console log the data, right? And the data confirmation here, let's go ahead and do new author here. Now, if I go ahead and click on submit, here's the console log of data that's coming through. It looks like this is the array of 4, right, different objects with the newest value reflected. For example, we see author here in the second one, but actually it says still 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I can state here, what's really returned to us is an updated books list. So what I can do over here now is I can say books setter, and I can set that equal to updated books list before we go ahead and redirect the user, right, to manage books. So again, here, we're going to update books state with latest list, or I'll state in this case, right, with our most up-to-date list of books. So again, our flow over here Let's refresh here. We should see that author now reflected as new author. But let's go to the third one here and let's start making these some real values. Let's say something like title, A Tale of Two Cities. And do you recall the author?
Charles
Who was that?
Dickens.
Charles Dickens. Thank you so much. It was right on the tip of my tongue there. All right. So there we go. So submit. And now we can see those changes reflected here, right?
All right.
Right off the bat. So I don't have to refresh here again because we're updating our book state over here, right? So we're always going to see like the most updated list here. Right? And we could say 1Q84. We could say Haruki Murakami. I'll go ahead and submit here. And now we can see those values reflected as well. All right. So again, the only issue here again is the refresh, right? If I refresh this page, then it's going to give us some issues. Because it's depending on us to navigate to this location, right, from the appropriate location. So let's see here. I want to just distinguish some differences here. If I click on edit in book lists, again, edit is going to be a link that takes us to this location, right? We're taken to this location. When we're taken to this location, edit book form goes ahead and it tries to access params, right, that are being passed here. So what I want to see is this. Again, params is over here. Let's go over to library. Let's click on edit. We can see the params coming through right here. Now, if I refresh, let's see if there's any params coming through over here. These are all the undefines that we're getting. Okay, so I can still see the params coming through for us here now. We should be able to access all those different values. But again, if I refresh, we are, in this case, losing the information that's being passed. Let's see. So let's go ahead here and one more time refresh. So again, the errors that we're getting cannot read properties of undefined reading ISBN. And basically in this case, we're getting undefined when I refresh the page. When I refresh the page, it seems like it's just having issues with finding that book in time in order for us to go ahead and actually see that book in question. Let's try something like book here. Let's refresh. Let's go to the very top. I'm going to actually clear this out and then refresh. Okay, so let's take a look back up here. Book in this case is an empty array. There's nothing that's found in there, which is why it's erroring out a little bit further down for us here. Now, params.book_ID, again, that's something that's made available to us through the URL. So if we're not finding a book in question here, let's try again here, params book_ID. Let's refresh here. Okay, so we're getting a value now if I do book_ID over here. Let's check out the navigate. Okay, navigate is over here as well. Now, what I would like is to pass down this individual book. There's different ways I could do it. If we're always getting the object here, I could initiate. I could go ahead and set up some sort of a state here of book for the individual book in question here. Let's try this approach here. I'm going to go ahead and still use params. but I'm going to create one more state here. And I'm just going to call this the individual book in question. Let's say set book. Let's say use state. And again, the initial book that we should have over here, I can go ahead and state that there's nothing in here initially. But if I go ahead and set, again, an empty array here as our initial value for this state of book, now what I've got to do is implement a use effect here as well that's going to initiate a request to the backend to pull up the latest information here. So let's go ahead and state here, we still want to go ahead and state book here, but this is going to be dependent upon our book state now. So let's say book.isbn, book.title, let's say book.author, let's say book.length, and let's also say book.hardcover. So again, now, what's going to happen is we want to go ahead and initiate a use effect here in order to pull the latest book. But edit book form, again, this is app.js. Let's see. We've got, in this case, again, all of our routes set here. And we've also got, in this case, edit book form. When we navigate to this path, we're able to pull out book_ID. We've got all of our books being passed in here as well. Now, if I could pass in an individual book element, that would be ideal for us here. But again, what we can state here is, let's say book, first of all. Now, before I try to access all these different values, let's go ahead and use this use state. Let's say use state, or excuse me, this is going to be use effect. And first we want the actual function, the behavior that's going to take place here. So what we want is a fetch request to http://localhost. In this case, I believe it was, I've got to go ahead and get it from app.js over here, but it was all of this. So let me just grab this. And let's drop this in. And let's say edit book. Or I could say, let's see on the routes.py side here. We have delete books, we have search books. Let's see if I can find an individual book in this question. And what I want to actually do here is JSONify the response, return a JSONified book, right? When we go ahead here and fire off a request here, right? So if I fire off a request, a GET request to this endpoint here, really all that it should do is return the JSONified book. So edit book form over here, I'm building out this fetch request. We're going to go ahead and say edit book. And I'm going to paste into here or interpolate into here the ID of the book in question, which is going to be inside of params. So what I can actually do is, let's say, const book ID. I can actually do this. Let's say const book_ID is equal to params. And what that's going to do is that's going to define this const of book ID for us that I can use down here. So again, when we load up this component here, it should fire off a fetch, right? To load up, like to get this information for a book. Let's say then we take the response, we parse the response from JSON to JavaScript. Then we go ahead and we take the response, excuse me, the data itself, which is going to be the individual book in question. And we're going to say set book to the book that's returned to us from this use effect. So if I go ahead here and if I hit enter, let's go ahead and give this a second here. Again, I want this to fire off just once. So I've got to include my dependency array here. Otherwise, we're going to get like an infinite loop kind of deal going on. So let's hit enter here. We're trying to access from the book state itself, which I'm activating here, which I'm loading up, right, with this use effect.
Oh.
But let's see if, again, in this case, if the initial values are going to be set equal to all these different states here. Set book, we go ahead and we update the book from an empty array, which it was initially, to a new book when we load up this page here. But again, the issue is pulling ISBN. So let's go ahead here and just state console.log of book, just to see if we're actually getting a book object here in question. So let's go ahead here. Let's do a refresh. Okay, and let's see if that book is coming through here. Okay, not seeing that book coming through here. So the issue then is we're not actually even reaching this final step here. So let's verify. We're sending again a fetch request to edit book and then book ID. We're sending it to the correct location over here. Let's go over to routes.py. Edit book, book ID. When there is a GET request, we take the book that has been passed in here of book ID. And then we go ahead and find that book before returning, right? JSONifying that book. So let me try a restart on the back end here, just to make sure. Let's go back to edit book over here. Let's go back over to library. Let's click on edit here. Okay. So again, in this case, if we're returning a JSONified book, when we hit this individual endpoint here, let's go ahead back to edit book form. We've got all the correct locations here, http://127.0.0.1 5000 edit book with the book IDs. Now, if there's no book coming through here, again, the issue is when we try to set the ISBNs here, right, to all these different values. What I can do is this actually. Let's go ahead and move this use effect a little bit lower. And let's set it over here. Let's bring in that use effect here. And we can set these all to just initially empty values. But then once we actually get a successful book here, we'll go ahead and update all those state values. So I'm going to go ahead and drop all these in, and that's going to get rid of all these errors that we've got going on here in terms of setting these initial values. Let's go ahead here and let's do, I'll use an empty array. Let's refresh here. So again, we're fetching to this location here, trying to just go ahead and console log that book. Let's see on the back end here. Object of type book is not JSON serializable. So let me go to routes.py. If the book itself I cannot serialize, let's see some other. Okay, so it looks like a dictionary is what needs to be passed here. So I'm going to state here book dot to dictionary to convert it. So let's go ahead over here and let's refresh. Okay. All right. So that was our issue over here, was that I just have to make sure to return a dictionary, right? An object in the form of a dictionary when I JSONify it.
All right.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, but yeah, there's a lot. But we do have all this book that we have console logged here. Now the final step where we bring all this together is where we go ahead and we say, okay, we want to say set book. Let's set that equal to the book, right, in question. Let's set ISBN or ISBN setter. Let me change this to be more let's say book setter. So let's say here book setter. And this is book. We have ISBN setter, and this is going to be book.isbn. And I'm also going to have title setter, and we're going to have book.title. We're going to have author setter, and we're going to have, we can see those values loading up, right? On the right side there. We have our length setter as well, and that's going to be book.length. And then we have our hardcover is hardcover setter. And we're going to set that equal to book.hardcover. So now this should be fine with a refresh, right? We can see how I can refresh that now. And I can access it this way too, without any problems.
All right.
So I can always refresh, and that's not going to error out for us anymore.
Awesome. So I guess all that needs to be done is these need to be deployed. And, you know, we talked, I forgot to, our, what is it? Fire, it's not Firefox. I keep on calling it Firefox. The thing where you set it up, where what we talked about, how you could set it up online. I forgot the
Netlify. I think it was Netlify, right?
Yeah, Netlify. That's right. It's supposed to. So we could do that tomorrow. Just get the two apps Netlified, if that's even a word. And then I can start to show you the capstone that I'm working on, because I have part of it on Auth for getting things logged in, but apparently, supposedly you're supposed to do Firestart or whatever, I think that's what it's called, for the SQL stuff, you know, getting in the information. So I can show you that. I can show you that in the latter half of tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good to me.
So I have to go back to the dentist. I'm getting the final veneers in tomorrow. So is it okay if we do our Wednesday schedule? Will we start an hour early? If not, that's okay. I mean, the buses here are pretty regular, so it's not like I have to, it's not like it's a roll of the dice.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that would be, so just to confirm here, just to make sure, you want to meet again on Wednesday?
Well, I mean, Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday. Okay. Okay.
My Wednesday, my Wednesday, your Tuesday.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that.
Sure. So tonight we met from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So would you like to meet again a little earlier, like 5 to 7? Do you think that might be a little better for you?
Yeah, that should be fine, because then that'll give me 2 hours to get there. I can get there and just kind of, you know, I had enough time last time to sit down and get a cup of coffee. So
okay, cool. So is it like keeping our time that we had tonight, that would be cutting it too close, you think? Tomorrow.
I just know Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm one of those better to be 20 minutes early than 5 minutes late. So just one of those.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. Well, I can totally set up, 5 to 7 for us. Just set up an hour earlier session.
Perfect.
Yeah, for tomorrow for us. So I'll do 5 to 7 p.m. We can definitely focus on deploying not only this application, but also the previous, right? The Flask API. In our next session. I mean, there's definitely still some kind of, cosmetic changes that we can make over here, but if we want to get it deployed, right, then we could get even just a very simple version like this deployed.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go ahead and get this stuff is submitted as quickly as possible, because for the capstone, I have to schedule a meeting with them and show them how to log in, how I can log in, how I can put in the data and all that stuff. So it's going to be, I don't know how long that's going to take. So I just want to get that set up and done. And
yeah.
We also have to put in our scores for Code Wars, which I got that done a while back, but it's just,
Okay.
everything's hitting its endpoint, so I just kind of want to get it done.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, so we can set up I'll set up 5 to 7 for us tomorrow, 2 more hours. Definitely, before deploying, we'll have to get into the authentication and authorization. We don't have any sort of like login or sign up set for this.
Okay.
So I'd say that would be like the first order of business for us for our next session is to set up the user authentication and authorization.
Okay.
Before going ahead and deploying, right? Just this very simple version. We could always touch it up. It could be a lot more cosmetically sound, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, user authentication and all that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to make sure they work, and then later I can go back and format it,
Yeah.
make it cosmetically look better.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Gotcha. The good thing is on the back end, we already have all the structures in place for handling like user authentication and authorization.
mhm,
Because we already tested all that out right on the back end, and we made sure that worked for us.
yeah,
So yeah, so again, it's our next session. It shouldn't be too complicated for us to go ahead and just connect the front end to that whole authorization authentication flow we have going on the back end.
awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, have a great day, Matt. And I'll set up
Have a
5 to
good
7
night.
for us. Yeah, thank you.
Sounds great. See you then.
All right. All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.